Greetings, gang. C.S. Bernard here once again for GeeKY News to talk about DC's latest home video release, Batman Year One. Of course, based on the classic 1980s graphic novel by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Batman Year One, as it was originally written, retold the origin story of Batman not so much as from the point of view of when his parents were killed and the long journey into becoming the Batman, but instead when he returned to Gotham after all of his training and so forth, and became Batman in the first year of how he struggled with the usual form of crime in Gotham at the time, which is corrupt politics, dirty cops, and of course, powerful drug and crime kingpins. It was a real mile marker in many ways, and it revamped Batman in terms of his more modern interpretation, and is the template for most other things we've seen, ranging from even the late 1980s, early 1990s Tim Burton films to the most recent films such as Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. This film, of course, having the famous scene where Batman uses bats to escape the police. Of course, being the case that the police have yet to trust him. As anyone knows that had either read or will watch this film, it also shows that even Jim Gordon wasn't all that appreciative of what Batman was and what kind of image he presented to Gotham as a mass vigilante going out and fighting crime on his own terms. This was definitely Batman as the outsider trying to work his way in, trying to help Gotham as a whole. It's also, of course, a great understanding of how we get to interpret Jim Gordon as well, as he goes from just a regular cop, climbing his way on up into the ranks that we'd later see him, eventually becoming the commissioner of all police in Gotham City. As for this animated interpretation, well, I can't really praise it for doing anything different from the source material. If you ever wanted a story that took the source material and almost copied it verbatim, this is it. Many fans of most things will complain when they feel like, oh, well, this was deleted, or they changed this, or they changed that. Not so here. The dialogue, the course of actions, almost every little scene is pretty much there that was in the original 1980s graphic novel. Probably because of the thinness of the novel itself. But even then, because it is such a very true-to-form interpretation, it boils down to whether or not you want to read a book or just watch a movie. That's it. The animation, of course, is up to par as we've come to expect from these recent animated releases through DC and under the auspices of Bruce Timm, of course the godfather of the DC animated universe from the 1990s into the early 2000s. For the most part, beyond that, that's the only people we can really associate with this project that have done anything previously related to either DC Comics or their Warner Brothers released products. Sure, the same voice director, voice caster, Andrea Romano, who's been there with Bruce Timm for, soon to be decades, both having been at this job for around 20 years or longer now. They picked decent people to play the parts of course, Commissioner Gordon, Batman, Commissioner Loeb, or, soon to be Commissioner Gordon, and, Lieutenant Gordon at the time. And Commissioner Loeb, the of course, corrupt go-between between the crime lords such as Roman Carmine, the Roman Falcone, and other crime lords within Gotham, and of course the corrupt Gotham Police Department. Beyond that, there's no familiar faces, no familiar names associated with this project. We don't even have Bruce Greenwood, who's become notable for having been the voice actor of Batman in Under the Red Hood, as well as being the Batman voice in the recent Young Justice cartoon that you can still find on Cartoon Network, and is still running in mid-season. You don't even have him. Beyond that, there are a handful of people who've been associated with various things to do with, various DC-related products, such as Arkham City. You can actually hear some of the voice actors who've voiced various thugs and goons there doing bit parts throughout this. Other than that, there's nothing very stand-outish about this. There's no subtle improvements or changes. There's not even nothing really to complain about. And that's fine, in a sense. Very few people can go ahead and hold up either a, original source material book or a, video movie release that are almost simpatico and word for word with each other. That's rare and an accomplishment in and of itself, but it leaves you again with just the option of whether you want to watch this story or read this story. To that end, I will say that the kind of blocky noir-esque art style that Mazzucchelli and Miller worked on between themselves and would of course be famous in more of their later works. If you don't really care for that and would prefer a more streamlined look to your Batman story, this would definitely be it. I can at least give it that much, that this is a better thing to look at than the original graphic novel, but not much else. The voice acting doesn't really stand out. The story is exactly word for word the same, and that's all I can really say. One thing I will take task with, though, is the DC animated short that comes with this. As, of course, anyone would know that's been buying these DVDs and Blu-rays recently, there's an animated short included. In this case, it's a Catwoman, who's, thankfully at least there, voiced by Alicia Dushku, who voices the character in the main film itself. If I were to say anything about any of it, it would probably be her short. While being rather interesting, and of course having the benefit of using, I believe, Kevin Michael Richardson, who is notable throughout many DC projects now, and various other programs for Cartoon Network and Warner Brothers in general. Beyond him and John DiMaggio, who, as everyone knows, is of course Bender the Robot from Futurama. Aside from them loaning their voices to this, I have to complain on it for the fact that it's a story that goes a little above and beyond what we would expect in terms of the willingness to suspend our disbelief in a Batman story. Things, that almost border on near superhuman levels. True, Batman and, anything associated with his stories is always above reality. We are looking at the comic book, superhero running around in spandex leather, Kevlar, all the little bits and pieces. But with the Catwoman story, there are just some moments that completely go right out the window and seem more like something you'd find in, a Superman story or any other number of beyond mere mortal abilities. There are reflexes that are just impossible, and the biggest failing in there has to be the fact that she takes way more abuse than any human being should be able to, crashing into car windshields and smashing into heavy metal objects into her back and shrugging it off. I mean, in a Batman story, you're definitely going to see him, rubbing his back and wondering about, all the pains that's going up and down his spine. We even, of course, had him in Crisis on Two Earths, another animated release. He was fighting with 2 broken ribs, and he felt that all the way through the film. At least all the way through the rest of the film that he had the broken ribs. Here, Catwoman just brushes it all off. And that, it completely takes you out of it. It's not believable, even by comic book standards, especially for the expectations we're given. The only other thing that can be said about this is I am rather hyped up about the sneak preview that comes with it. There's a featurette backing it up of the next upcoming animated film, which will be Justice League Doom. I'm really looking forward to that. If you watch the special feature featuring that, you'll get all sorts of little tidbits, such as the story being based 50% on the Tower of Babel story, wherein Batman had created a number of contingency plans to take down each member of the Justice League in case they should ever go rogue, and they fall into enemy hands. Supervillains wind up getting them and using them to devastating effect on each member of the Justice League. Not in and of itself a bad premise, but they pair it up, of course, with the inclusion of the Legion of Doom. Notable for, of course, being the main cast of anti-opposites for the Justice League in the 1960s, 1970s cartoon, The Challenge of the Super Friends. But of course, with the in-keeping style of Bruce Timm, they're more badass than what they were there, and their constant, rule the world schemes being foiled kind of goofily. And of course, they're more menacing in their approach to things. But what really sets this up on an alert for fans in general, Bruce Timm's work, and of course the DC Animated Universe, is the fact that these characters will, of course, be voiced by Tim Daly, Superman, Kevin Conroy, Batman, and so many others that had been in the DC Animated Universe beforehand, especially on the Justice League and Justice League Unlimited projects. That definitely gets your attention. On the whole, compiling all this together, if you get the Blu-ray, DVD, doesn't really matter. The film in of itself, I'd give it a 4 out of 5 simply for being based on one of the more classic template stories that reintroduced Batman, Catwoman, and Lieutenant, eventually Commissioner James Gordon all over again, and fixed their story so that we could understand where they come from and how they are in more recent projects, again ranging from the late 80s all the way to now. With a 4 out of 5 rating on the story, I'm going to have to pan on the bizarreness of the Catwoman short, maybe giving a 3 out of 5. But I definitely will be, recommending Justice League Doom to anybody that's willing to check out anything related to Warner Brothers and DC projects. Well, that's all I can say for this little outing. Next time I'll be looking at other various things. More specifically, I'm eyeing the Sonic Generations game. I've yet to play it, bought it, but I've been lost in Arkham City for well over a month now. What can you blame me? Anyway, CS Bernard here, checking out for GeeKY News. See you next time.